So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to start off by having you introduce yourself, what position you're running for, what city, and basically if you've had any involvement in local politics before, and just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to be a part of this conversation. I am Janessa Garcia, and I am a candidate for the Oxnard Union High School District Board of Trustees. I am currently a student at Cal Lutheran University pursuing public administration. I grew up in Oxnard, California, as well as my parents, and I did attend the local public schools and did graduate this year from Oxnard High School as a part of the class of 2020. Throughout my life, helping students and helping with social justice issues that affect students has always been something I'm passionate about doing. And I wouldn't consider myself to be an extrovert or the loudest in the classroom, but when it comes to issues that I deeply care about, there's just no way that I cannot advocate for it, because it means so much to me to be able to inspire young individuals. I do have strong experience in student government at the district and at the high school level. I did serve as the Oxnard Union High School District council president, in which I discussed issues that were affecting students with other student leaders in our district. And I also served as the Oxnard High School student body president, in which I also served as the junior class president, and for both of those terms, our student government was actually honored as an outstanding leadership program in California by the California Association of Student Leaders. Most definitely with that, I got a clear grasp on how we could reach different groups and elevate diversity, equity, and inclusion on campus. And then I did serve as the Student Side Council representative for 2 years, where I was able to represent students on where school funds should be allocated. In addition, I've worked with the underserved youth population in Oxnard and have created student-led programs to help build that gap. I'm proud of the work that I've done, but I know that there's still more work to be done to really push for student success, educational equity, diversity, and inclusion.
You have quite an impressive resume, to just say the least. I just want to dabble into the fact that you had all of this going on in high school, and now you mentioned that you're a college student. What made you decide to go straight into the local government rather than maybe like finishing college and then pursuing this area?
For sure. So this is definitely a question I get a lot, and I feel like it's because I think we're not used to seeing young voices stepping up and taking action. However, as a young voice, I'm proud to see organizations such as Justice in the Classroom and others as well, and just seeing young individuals really take action. And to me, this has really been my life's work. And I said this before, where I didn't just wake up one day and decide, oh my gosh, I want to, inspire people or help people who really need it. This is something that as a young Girl Scout, as a 10-year-old, that I fell in love with. I fell in love with just being able to help people and having them find their own voice. It's truly something meaningful, because then they can become their own leaders in their communities. And that's just, overall, it's so heartwarming to see that all, I guess, come together. And so to me, there is no waiting in a sense. It's what I want to do now because I'm so passionate about it. And so passionate about it is something that I will always be, if that makes any sense. So yeah.
I like that I love your response, because that completely embodies justice in the classroom. All of us were so tired of waiting for change to happen. So we, as youth, we came together to try to make these changes happen ourselves. So I think your message completely aligns with what we're trying to accomplish.
Yes, I love that.
So another thing that I want to dabble on is obviously you being a grassroots candidate, that comes with challenges as it is, but you being such a young candidate as well, what kind of obstacles have you faced throughout your campaign, and what do you think you're going to face going forward if elected?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest obstacles is people and organizations only having interest in maintaining the status quo and aren't truly open to really listening to the things that this district can do with a young leader on the board. And each day, as I keep getting farther into this campaign, I realize that I'm constantly being faced with these tall mountains to climb, but I won't stop climbing and advocating. You know, I choose to see these obstacles as a reason to keep going and not stopping, because these are my peers' futures. These are our community's futures. And you know, it affects all of us, it impacts all of us. And I think uplifting our next generations and this generation is truly powerful. And especially it coming from, you know, a student's perspective, where we can connect a lot more with these students is important. And sometimes, you know, these visions don't necessarily align with, like I said, other people and organizations. As far as if I'm elected, what challenges do I see myself facing? Correct? That was a
Yeah.
question. Um, I think the same thing. Honestly, I think I will need to prove myself, and I'm ready to prove myself, to sort of, to have these people and these organizations believe in me. And I don't want to prove anyone wrong in a sense. I don't want to use it in that way, but I want to work together. I want to work together to build a better community and a better district. And that is why I'm here. That is all I stand for, to be the student for students.
I think that's an amazing message, being students for students, because that's honestly what we need in the school board, having someone's voice that has actually experienced all of these challenges and seen the problems firsthand. So thank you so much for your passion and
Oh my
your
goodness.
compassion in everything.
Oh, thank you.
Another thing that I wanted to touch on is, as a candidate, what do you think, or excuse me, how important do you think issues of diversity and equity are in the school district?
Definitely. So diversity, equity, and inclusion are the cornerstones of my campaign. A couple years ago, a couple classmates and we actually did a project that deeply examined homeless and foster youth populations at our high school, and then we even recognized it and looked into it more at a district level. This project we did meant so much to me because it was the first time I had noticed and really paid attention to just how diverse the needs of so many students were, and how much students in need were being left behind and not provided for with the correct or any resources at all. And so some of our goals of donating to these students during the winter and establishing, you know, a pantry filled with supplies are what I pushed for to see through. And I think that it's important to continue to sort of examine all of these things, because they are important. I feel like it's everything, correct? Right? Educational equity. How are we going to get all students on an even playing field to succeed? And then, of course, as a student body president, and I think that as a district and as student leaders, the student leaders who are there now, of course, we all need to make sure that with every event that the students plan, is this inclusive? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves. And as student body president, I was really proud, because we held so many diverse events that celebrated International Women's Day, SPED Homecoming, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Day. We held cultural weeks and Kindness Week, my favorite. And these are just some of the many events that we compassionately crafted to make everyone feel included. And I think that they're important for all students, teachers, administrators, and students, of course, including the board, to embody, and to also show.
I think that's amazing, especially with your background as a student body president. You have seen these inequities firsthand, and you've done your best to try to improve them in the school. And you express the fact that you're going to bring the same energy when you're on the school board, and in that regard.
Exactly, definitely.
And I want to touch on the school board a little bit.
Mhm.
So, in your opinion, do you think it's the school board's responsibility to be aware of the students' struggles or anything that they're facing in their school districts?
Oh, absolutely. In order to build any nurturing and loving system where individuals can thrive, you must understand them. School districts in general must understand that students are not just students. Students are community members. Students are stakeholders of this system. And I know that people often forget that. And in order for a board to create relevant and achievable goals and policies, it must understand what issues are affecting our students in and outside of the classroom.
And on that same note, what do you think directly needs to be changed or addressed within your own district?
So I believe that the policies in place right now need to be addressed and looked at more, because I would say that some of them do not stand true. If policies are created to expose and challenge students, then that is what should be done for all students. Resources for all students, from homeless to the 30% of our students, of the district students who are not socioeconomically disadvantaged, but still face, really relevant challenges today. And so uplifting all students and building an environment where students don't feel teared down by adults or disadvantaged because of their background is really important. And to be quite honest, beginning to build a better district begins with conversations with students who face these challenges day in and day out. We need more resources for our homeless youth, like establishing pantries at every school site. We also need more college and future readiness for students, like our EAOP, at every site. And we need to show teachers the importance of teaching a more diverse and well-rounded curriculum in which students can relate to.
And on that same note, what do you think would be some action items to achieve these certain goals? Because you touched on the actual issues, so what do you think needs to be put in place to achieve those?
Definitely. So I feel like listening to the students first and foremost, of course. I feel like sometimes we as elected officials, sometimes there are meetings that are held, but they're announced that they're held, and I think we can take a different action. We can take a different sort of route, and we can reach out to these students. We can call these students, email these students. I mean, technology is becoming so much more advanced with COVID right now, and so really reaching out to these students and asking what equity looks like to them, what needs they need, and also discrimination, any policies surrounding that. I think it's important to talk to students, especially the ones that are going through it right now.
And as you're familiar with our organization, Justice in the Classroom, we have 6 proposals that we're striving to achieve that tackle all areas of diversity and inclusion. So which one of these proposals do you feel most strongly about or think can be implemented within your own district?
Definitely. Proposal 3, diversity and inclusion, and promoting more student leadership, promoting more student of color in leadership. I truly believe that having students of different backgrounds and cultures in leadership positions encourages marginalized students to speak up and join these conversations. Once I began to see the value in my own voice, it became my lifelong mission to help others become bolder and see that they too can create change. I would strongly argue that it is within all of us to change this world and make it better for our futures. And so this is what I will continue to do. I will continue to be the student for students, to not only advocate and represent all stakeholders, but show them that they are just as capable.
So I think that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Another point that I wanted to address is the fact that on your campaign website, you advertise the fact that you have students working on your campaign because you're essentially a student running for students. So how did you come to that like that campaign plan? And because I think that's very unique when it comes to running a school board, having students actually working on that campaign.
Yeah, well, I think in the same way that students should be represented, should be equally represented on the board, that's what I'm championing, that's what I'm campaigning, and I think including students, I know how much talent there is in Oxnard and Camarillo. There is amazing talent, and including these students in my campaign and, showing people that we are products of this district, and yes, we've done these things, um, we've achieved these things. There's also something more to be done. There's more for, our, what would you call it?
Our generation.
I would always, yeah, like I always say, like, my AS babies, like the ASB babies of, I always say, I always look out for them. And I think it's so important to really include the students that I graduated with, because, we faced very similar obstacles. And so including them in my campaign just it really means a lot to me. And especially them, saying like, oh yeah, of course, like we support you 100%.
So another thing that I wanted to touch on is the fact that, as you know, with a lot of movements that have sparked up, a lot of teenagers have taken to social media and to try to be activists in that sense. How do you think that compares to getting out and doing stuff within your own community? Do you think that those two are comparable, or is there an overlap? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely think that they overlap and that they are comparable. I read this quote, and it's just like, today's youth are the leaders of today and tomorrow. And so often we hear that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, but in fact, that is so true. We are leaders of today and we are leaders of tomorrow, and championing and just being so active in our community. I don't see any wrong in that. And I think that is absolutely amazing to see such young individuals go out and organize protests. And even here where I live in Oxnard, we had a student who I actually knew. She was on my tennis team. She organized a protest, and it's absolutely amazing. I think that all of these young individuals should be looked at not as less than, but as like, wow, like this next generation is powerful. And yes, we are powerful, and we want to be involved. We want to be involved in the decisions that are being made for our futures.
The youth are the change makers of today. We are the ones that are bringing all the changes, starting the conversations. So I think it really starts with just having conversations in your households, or just even if it be on a social media post. Whether the fact that you have 100 followers or 1,000 followers, you still have an influence. And I think that goes the same with your campaign, because even though you're so young, you still have an influence amongst so many students. So I think that's just amazing. And I know before we spoke on this, I explained to you that I'm only a year younger than you, and I have a passion for politics, and I never even considered just going out and running for school board myself. But seeing you, I thought about it now. I'm thinking, wow, that's something I could do. And I think a lot of people around your age, around my age, will also have the same thought.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, thank you. I think it's great, because I remember when looking into, I was like, oh my goodness, like, what are the requirements? Can I run for a school board? And sure enough, yeah, the requirements are that you just have to be a community member and you have to be 18 and a registered voter. And honestly, that's amazing. That's knowledge that I never knew. And so I thought, why not? Why not fight and advocate for these students? So many students that I know are still, in the OUHSD system, and I want to be better for them. I want to be inspirational for them, and I want to make sure that they too find their own voice and their own passion.
And I just think, as a final note, I want to ask you, what advice do you have for high school students, maybe in the senior class right now, what they can do as they graduate high school, as they're going out into the real world, how they can be student activists or try to make a difference in their community the same way that you have?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned, definitely finding your passion. I think, sometimes we find what we love in places we would never assume. And so I think just being an active community member, and really just loving, I don't know how to explain this. It's just, I guess it's a feeling. It's not really, I don't have a distinct answer where I can say, this is what you can do to make sure that you become an activist or a leader. It's all about finding your passion and about finding things that you love and being loud about them, and not standing down and not being afraid, but being bold and being confident. Because I truly stand with the fact that if you follow your heart and if you find your passion and you advocate for what you love, people will see that true authenticity, and they will see how drive you are to do, what you're doing. And then they're going to think of you as a leader without you really knowing it. And I think that's something that we should all, in our hearts, do. We should all set out to change the world and to find what we love and to, I guess, protect it in a way. But in general, I think that everyone has potential to make an impact, and every young individual has such great potential, but sometimes we just don't see it. And like I said, I don't think that I'm one of the loudest in my classrooms, but I can guarantee you that if it's a topic that I love, I will be there and I will be strong.
I think just everything that you've said today has been absolutely amazing.
Oh,
So thank you so much for joining us. Justice in the Classroom is so honored to have you, and
Honored to be
we wish you
here.
the best of luck in the rest of your candidacy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.